To give you an example, this is a case study from the oil sands in Alberta, Canada. And I wanted to bring this example because in that instance, there was a very, very high level of community concern about the possibility of cancer. There was very much worry, the oil sands activities, which you can see, the oil sands are upstream of this community. And the people were worried that there was contaminants going into the water and it was going to cause this epidemic of cancer. So the government of Canada commissioned an independent scientific committee called the Royal Canadian Society, and they undertook this extensive environmental and social and health analysis. And what they found was that there was no evidence of risk for cancer. There was no elevated level of environmental contaminants in the water. They also found that there was no risk of a change in the water quality or in the water quantity. So many of the things that people had perceived to be problems, they found simply weren't there. However, what they did find was this issue of rapid development. And in this area, which was very much inhabited before the sands started to be developed by Indigenous Native Canadians, in a period of less than 10 years, the town doubled in its size. And they found that there was not enough investment in the local infrastructure, in the roads, in the health systems, in the schools, to keep pace with that rapid change. And the people that had lived there previously were experiencing increased costs of living. They couldn't afford to rent the apartments, the food, there were housing shortages, there was loss of jobs. So there were these pressures which ended up putting the health of that population, even though that population, which was where all of the money was, all of the oil was, they were declining in their health status compared to the populations nearby. And they found evidence of increased crime, alcoholism, drug use, and family stress. So just to summarize some of the points about the two areas I had just discussed. So why that health really is something, it's a common good, it's important to all of us, to all stakeholders. That we need to remember that we talk about the oil and gas extraction, it's that the footprint in terms of health is much bigger than just the size of the well. And that's because it's the result of a mixture of many different environmental, social, and development changes. But it's also important to remember that these health impacts, they can be positive as well as not just negative. These risks to health are known. We have experienced and we have seen this. They can be anticipated and they can be managed, provided that we identify those risks to health early. And this is the key. We have to identify them as part of planning and as part of design, not just when we start to see the problems emerge. And that we have the adequate systems and the adequate capacities in place. And this will be my transition into how it is that we do that. The first thing is that the health system needs to be a partner in this process, that they're not just a stakeholder, but that the health system needs to be a partner in the decision-making, in the planning. And why is that? It's because the health system can conduct a number of functions that are essential to the success of this industry. First, they can help to identify what are the relevant health risks, as well as the benefits, and they can outline a vision and a plan of what are the interventions that need to take place to address them. And in fact, often using very simple, low-cost public health interventions. They have a critical role to play in monitoring and in reporting and evaluation, providing important epidemiological data and health indicators that can be used for the baseline, playing a role in early warning to detect if there are any unforeseen issues that are coming up, as well as this idea of measuring what is the net development impact of having this investment. So looking at how is it that the growth of the petroleum sector has actually contributed to human development. We can measure that in terms of health. Other functions include responding to community concerns and perceptions of risk. The health sector is quite experienced in dealing with risk communication and knows how to engage in dialogue with mothers of children and understanding what their worries are. So they have a key role as an interlocutor with the communities. They have a key role to play in emergency preparedness and response, in particular responding to chemical incidents and being able to recognize and accurately diagnose when presented with a case of chemical contamination. And the health system also has a core role to play in terms of responding to the health issues affecting both the workers and the communities. It's not often that you end up with a project site that has the capacity to deal with complex health problems. They often refer them to the health system. So there's a need to be sure that the health system knows how to deal with the problem that they're presented with. And now we're coming sort of to the end part, which is where I'll talk a little bit about what are some of the means, some of the tools, and the good practice in actually identifying what these health issues are and in managing them. What kinds of systems have we seen? The first is one that you may be familiar with. It's called health impact assessment. It's very similar to the process of environmental impact assessment. And effectively what this is it's a process, an analytical process, whereby a project or a plan is systematically looked at or analyzed to determine whether or not there are any health issues, and then to generate recommendations about how those issues can be addressed. But the key is that it's done before the plan is implemented. So that the value of using health impact assessment is that it can give you the foresight to make sure that when you implement, the legacy of what you implement will be positive in terms of its effect on health. How does it work? As I said, it's a system for analyzing the specific activities associated with a given project to look at the health impacts associated with those activities. It can be used to generate a baseline of the pre-existing health conditions so that it can allow for monitoring as well as for a comparative estimation of the net change in terms of health. Using health impact assessment, you can identify what your intervention options are and you can generate recommendations that can be built into an action plan. The baseline can give you a basis for a framework for monitoring and evaluating that is very specific to that particular project. And most importantly, I think that health impact assessment, it provides a process and a platform for systematically engaging all stakeholders in the decision-making process, including communities, including different sector actors, including industry, including health and other government authorities. And this is just a photo of a guideline that WHO is developing on this very issue, on what it is, what are the models or the systems that are being tested in different countries around the world to put in place these governance structures that will allow for the identification and the management and the monitoring of the human health effects of natural resource extraction. And I put this up here because we, as WHO, are very interested in the opportunity that you have here in Basilicata to develop a model that we could link into this program that we have in Geneva to share with international good practice. So some key messages. Health is really vital for the successful growth of the oil and gas sector, as well as for the development of the region. To remember that health impacts are not only associated with environmental risk factors, but with the wider socioeconomic changes that can take place. There is an opportunity through health to anticipate and to make sure that this oil really is good for development. But in order to do that, we need to make the health system a key partner in the planning and decision-making process. And just to say that there are tools and there are good practice examples of how we can do this. And how would we do this here? What are some recommendations and some messages that we have for you? That this observatory is a fantastic opportunity to start setting up some of those systems, and that we think that you have an opportunity to include health within that. That health should also be a part of the baseline studies that will be undertaken, as well as part of the impact assessment studies and the evaluation of environmental and social issues. And again, that to engage the health authorities in the overall planning process and in their response, and in particular in any of the emergency preparedness and response activities that are being discussed, also in light of the risk for natural disasters and for seismic activity. The health is a key ally in that. And as well as part of any infrastructure planning. If there are going to be roads constructed or other facilities that will be constructed, that health should also be a part of that. So I'll leave it there, and we'll open it up, I think, for questions. And there was one other point to make with that as well, that to do this, there will be a need as well to look at building capacity within the health system, within the medical officers, for them to be able to contribute to environmental monitoring as well. So we have at WHO these pediatric green history forms that are a way of sensitizing the medical physicians in identifying and understanding how to determine environmental exposure within the population. So as a way of making the link, the bridge between environment and health a bit more concrete through the health providers and the health network.